From an odd relationship between a brother and sister on the red carpet to a slap heard round the world, these are the biggest controversies in the history of the Oscars. It's March 26 in the year 2000. In the turn of a new century, the Oscars were sure to present an unforgettable night. Well, the night was one we wouldn't soon forget, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Angelina Jolie strolled to the stage to accept her award for Best Supporting Actress. The crowd applauded in admiration. During her speech, she left the crowd confused.
I'm in shock, and I'm so in love with my brother right now.
I'm so in love with my brother right now. Wait, did she really just say that? Okay, maybe it didn't mean anything. After all, we aren't talking about Jamie and Cersei Lannister. At the Vanity Fair after party for the Oscars, Angelina took it a step further, kissing her brother on the lips. The world was left in shock. Following the Oscars, this was the only story in the headlines. Angelina told the story of how she leaned on her brother during the time of her parents' divorce. The media had a field day and turned an innocent act of sisterly affection into a circus. I'm honestly not sure what to think. Next up, we have a moment that you'll probably remember. In the 2017 Oscars, Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty were on stage to present the award for Best Picture. Unfortunately, the two must have drifted off into La La Land. Don't worry, that joke will make sense in just a minute. As the pair were announcing the winner, Beatty seemed a bit confused. Faye took over, grabbing the paper and announcing La La Land as the winner.
La La Land.
The crowd erupted as the fan favorite won Best Picture. Most of the cast and directing crew for La La Land hurried onto the stage, and the Oscar was ready to be handed over. The crew was handed their trophies, and they began to give their speeches. They thanked their family, friends, and everyone who helped them lead La La Land to this monumental award. There was just one problem. They didn't win. That's right. In actuality, Moonlight had won the Oscar for Best Picture. There was a bit of screw-up with the card, and Dunaway called out the wrong film. Luckily, the director of La La Land handled the situation with grace, telling the cast and crew of Moonlight that they'd actually won.
Moonlight, Best Picture.
The situation was ultimately rectified, but it was absolutely an Oscars to remember. Another one to remember was the 1980s Oscars. The night was running smoothly. No huge controversies, no scandals. It just didn't feel like the Academy Awards. Then Francis Ford Coppola didn't win the award for Best Director. I know what you're thinking. This isn't a controversy or a scandal, right? Well, this snub remained a hot topic in the news for quite some time. After all, his movie that year, Apocalypse Now, happens to be one of the biggest movies of Coppola's career. It's even revered as one of the greatest movies of all time. Despite this, Coppola lost to Robert Benton for his film Kramer vs. Kramer. This was considered a scandal by many. There's even been a long-suspected rumor that would explain why Coppola was snubbed. That rumor is the Academy didn't want to give him more awards because of the amount he had already received for his prior film, The Godfather. Although we'll never know the exact reason for him losing. The 1980s Oscars is one that will never be forgotten. Next up, we are going to travel back all the way to 1969. In this particular version of the Academy Awards, there was a tie for Best Actress between Barbra Streisand and Katharine Hepburn.
The winners are Katharine Hepburn in Lion in the Winter and Barbra Streisand.
This might not seem like a big deal, but considering Streisand was just a 26-year-old up-and-comer, it made waves in pop culture news. Hepburn was a seasoned vet and typically ties with the Academy as someone with a little more experience. Not this time. This showed the world that there was a new group of actors and actresses coming up, and that anyone could make it on that stage. This would pave the way for future Oscar showings, including that of Cher at the 1986 awards. Throughout the Oscars, the outfits have become more and more shocking, especially these days. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, fashion wasn't quite as unique as it is today, until Cher decided to blow people away with her interesting choice of dress, if that's even what you would call it. Showing up to the red carpet in an incredibly low-waisted skirt and a very revealing crop top, she certainly caught the eyes of everyone around. This wasn't even the centerpiece of her outfit. On her head, she wore a flamboyant flamboyant headpiece made of feathers. Apparently, there was even a reason behind this crazy outfit. Bob Mackie, Cher's fashion designer, told The New Yorker that the outfit was an act of revenge. Revenge for not getting nominated for her role in Mask. It was simply to get a crazy amount of attention. That it did. The only thing that could have brought more attention to it would be if social media had been around back then. One Oscars ceremony that social media was a factor in was in 2015. You might remember this for its trending hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. This controversy started with a tweet from April Rain. After all 20 nominations for acting roles went to white actors, Rain tweeted this with the purpose of pushing a message. It took off as many continued with this hashtag and boycotted the 2015 Oscars. This put the Academy further under the microscope, with stars pointing out that the Academy membership is 92% white. Oof. Director Spike Lee was one of the first to speak out on this issue. He pushed his followers to boycott the event and not even watch it on TV. Leading up to the Oscars, this took a toll on the publicity of the event. There was fear that the TV ratings would plummet, and the show was incredibly careful with how it presented itself. One of the more prominent actresses who boycotted the event was Jada Pinkett Smith. Jada urged her fans to boycott the event, advocating for change. This went on to be the center of a joke for comedian Chris Rock, as he made fun of her boycott, saying no one cared if she was there or not.
Jada got mad. Jada says she's not coming. Protesting. I'm like, is she on a TV show?
In the years following, it seemed there was a major effort taken by the Oscars to rectify this issue, and it hasn't been a problem since. However, Jada and Chris ended up being in the middle of the biggest Oscars controversy in history almost a decade later. The 2022 Oscars were hosted by Chris Rock for the second time. During one of his bits, he pointed a joke towards Pinkett Smith. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
Famous last words, Chris. For context, Jada decided to shave the rest of her hair after being diagnosed with alopecia. At first, the crowd laughed, until Jada's husband, Will Smith, ventured onto the stage.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The crowd assumed this was nothing more than a bit. It wasn't. Once Smith reached Chris, he slapped him hard. The crowd laughed, and Chris tried to play it off, but it quickly became apparent that this wasn't a joke.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth!
Keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth, Smith screamed. It's been over a year since this controversy, and it's pretty much the only thing anyone remembers about the 2022 Oscars. It recently resurfaced as Chris Rock finally spoke out on what happened. In his Netflix special, he decided to use his show to roast Will Smith over the incident, calling him a biatch. The Academy Awards have been going since 1927, and although there have been many controversies, I think we can all agree that the slap heard round the world blew the rest out of the water. And there you have it. These were the biggest controversies in the history of the Oscars.